Good morning, everyone. The time is exactly 10 o'clock. I think we can start with our event. My name is Aphelele Nzimande, and thank you so much for joining us for the Liasa Online event, first event of the year. Let me share. Okay. While we originally planned to host this event in January, but for unforeseen circumstances led to rescheduling. But we are happy and so excited that you have joined us today. It's a great pleasure to see familiar names on my screen, and I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all our colleagues who continue to support and participate in our professional development event. It is equally exciting to welcome so many new names as well on my screen. A warm welcome to those joining the Liasa community for the first time. And so a few individuals here, we're looking forward to receive your Liasa membership applications soon. Before we begin, I have just a few quick announcements. Please note that the microphones are currently muted and cameras are disabled. If you wish to speak, kindly raise your hand and the host will unmute you. You are welcome to use the chat box and at any time for questions and comments. Please ensure that your name is properly displayed on the screen. This will help us when we are rewarding the CPD points. Today's event is titled Coping Strategies for Libraries, Professionals and Work-Life Balance webinar. When I first joined Liasa as a staff member, my manager at that time, Anna Marie, shared a valuable piece of advice. She said, "A fresh and healthy mind produces better results." This insight has certainly proven to be true based on my experience with you so far. In line with this, today's event is especially timely and important. Our focus will be on exploring techniques to build resilient, manage stress in our workplace, and achieve a healthy work-life balance to prevent burnout. As you have seen on our emails, we will be addressing key topics such as time management, setting boundaries, prioritizing self-care, stress management, mindful practices and strategies for maintaining overall well-being. As we engage in today's discussion, it is important to recognize that this aligns perfectly with South African Library Week 2025 theme, which emphasizes libraries for sustainable communities. This theme speaks directly to the heart of our library professionals and reflects the spirit of sustainable development goals, especially in fostering mental and emotional well-being as part of a sustainable future. Our shared vision of creating resilient, balanced, and sustainable library environment is also encapsulated in our hashtag, We Are Sustainable. Let's continue to strive for our well-being, not only for ourselves, but for the communities we serve, for the library users, and for the community we serve. Before we dive into today's session, let me take a moment to introduce our esteemed speaker, Mr. Sandile Radebe. Mr. Radebe is a qualified and experienced professional who holds a Master of Social Science degree in Educational Psychology and dually accredited by the Health Professional Council of South Africa, HPCSA, not Liasa this time. He is registered as an educational psychologist there. His academic journey also includes an honors degree in psychology, as well as undergraduate degree in psychology and anthropology. So if you ever need help with understanding your mind and understanding your behavior at the same time, Mr. Radebe is the right person. Professionally, Mr. Radebe has worked with the non-profit organizations tackling social challenges, especially those affecting school-going children. At Incema NPO, he provided counseling to sexually reactive children and those impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. He also contributed his expertise at the CHO Children's Cancer Foundation South Africa, offering psychological support to children with cancer and their families. He has served as an adherence counselor at Wiz Kids Health Academy, as well as providing psychological services aboard the Pholela train. I'm not sure if the train is still moving, but yes, you heard me correctly, a train. If you thought your commute was stressful, imagine doing a therapy on a moving train. In addition to all this, Mr. Radebe has lectured at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and maintains a thriving private practice as an educational psychologist. So let's give Mr. Radebe a warm visual round of applause as we welcome him. Mr. Radebe, over to you.
Thank you so much, Aphelele. Good morning to everyone. I'm not too sure if everyone can hear me. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. So can everyone see?
We can see that you are sharing your screen, but it is still blank for now.
Okay. Can you see now?
Yes, yes, we can see PowerPoint presentation. Maybe you can just do presentation mode.
Okay, what's the thing? I'm actually struggling.
Maybe if you click on that small, yeah, there.
Yeah, okay, it's still processing.
Yes.
So as Aphelele has introduced me, I'm Sandile Radebe, and I'm an educational psychologist based in Pietermaritzburg, KZN. So today will be, oh, I don't know what's happening now. Okay, so today we'll be looking at building resilience and managing stress. And I would like to first start with the presentation, and then right at the end, we will have a Q&A session. So for those that will have questions in the middle of the presentation, please note them down or write them down, and then you may ask them at the end of the presentation. So the first thing that I would want us to dive into is defining stress. So stress is defined as the physical, emotional, or mental tension that occurs when an individual perceives a threat, challenge, or pressure that exceeds their ability to cope. So basically, it's anything that hinders a person's patterns of thinking or hinders their psyche in an event where they feel challenged, threatened, or pressured by life circumstances. And I want to highlight that as much as I've given this broad definition of what stress is, but I want us to understand that there is positive stress and negative stress. In most cases, when we refer to positive stress, we're referring to things that actually inspire us to do better. They actually motivate us. Like, for an example, if you are feeling a bit anxious that you might not pass an exam, or you might not present your presentation to par, or something like that, it will then boost you to do better. But then we have another version of stress, which is negative stress, which then hinders your executive functioning. And I want us to focus more on the deeper understanding of the manifestation of stress, because I do understand that we are all familiar, and it's an everyday term. Uguti, when a person is feeling discomfort, mentally discomfort, they'll say, "Oh, I feel so stressed. I just found out that my significant other is having an affair. Now I'm feeling under stressed." So the root cause of stress, it is usually predisposed by trauma. You'll find that when a person is reacting to a particular challenge, like, let's say, for an example, they feel threatened, and then as a result, they're now experiencing tension, mental tension and physical tension, as their body and mind is trying to indicate that they are now experiencing stress. You'll find that actually, whatever it is that happened was actually only a trigger. So when you do a history intake, and I'm sure many of you have seen, Oguti, when you are watching TV, movies or series where a person is seeing a psychologist, often a psychologist will ask them to tell them more about their childhood. As much as they'll come into therapy saying that, "Oh, I just found out that my partner is cheating on me, or my partner has assaulted me and I want to leave," uh, pretty much the psychologist would want to know more about the history of the client. The reason being, they would want to understand what has laid, or what has made this person to have these coping mechanisms. Often I work with couples because I deal a lot with parents and children. So I do couples therapy most of the times. So you'll find that when a person, let's say, for an example, they're experiencing GBV, gender-based violence, or intimate partner violence, they will come into therapy with the hopes that the psychologist, or as a psychologist, they'll provide them with strategies of leaving the relationship. Instead, I will ask them about their early relationship patterns, from the foundation phase, which is their childhood. The reason why I would ask them about their childhood is because I want to understand their attachment style. Because when a person chooses a significant other, often they would choose someone who would remind them of their childhood. So if their childhood was toxic, or the parents were abusive towards them at an early age, they will then lay a foundation or an understanding that whatever it is that their parents are doing to them signifies what true love is. So when they grow up, they would seek all of those qualities in the people that they're dating. A typical example would be the people that you guys are dating. And if you do a history intake, you'll find that this even laps out to the people that you associate or affiliate yourself with. So what happens then if you are working with a person who has a history of abuse within their family, or maybe they have experienced bullying? This person will then form coping mechanisms, and usually people who have experienced traumatic incidences such as abuse, they will then remain stagnant within that particular area of their lives, meaning that if that abuse occurred when you were 6 years old, and as a result, you will build barriers trying to protect that child, that 6-year-old child, you will then keep on oppressing the child up until you become an adult, meaning that you'll be wounded psychologically without actually being aware of it, because often people would use repression as a coping mechanism in order for them to forget what happened. So you will find that people who have used this coping mechanism in a workspace, you'll find that they're overly agitated, they'll be frustrated most of the time, and often they would use anger to shield that sense of vulnerability that they experienced as a child. To them, unconsciously, they would think that if they show signs of weakness in a workplace, it would then mean that they are weak. It would then mean that they are vulnerable to bullying. It would mean that they are vulnerable to the bullying or the abuse that they faced when they were children, which is why that you'll find in many workspaces, and I'm sure you guys know people, if you're not the person, that you'll find Uguti, whenever people are making jokes and all of that, they're laughing, they're socializing, you'll just want to isolate yourself because in your head, you'll say, I don't want people to take me like that. I don't want people Uguti and all of that. However, the only poisonous or dangerous thing about a person who is psychologically wounded and is not aware is that they end up wounding others, particularly in a workspace. I would use an example of a relationship again. For a man who was mistreated as a child, let's say who was bullied a lot, they would form this persona that, okay, since I've been bullied so much, I've been made to feel less of myself, let me make myself fierce. They will then, when entering relationships, they would use aggression to shield their vulnerability. The same thing will happen in a workspace. Whenever they come to work, they would want, especially if they are in a higher position, they would want to make people below them feel as if they are minors or they are good for nothing. The same thing applies to females as well. Females who experience abuse, who are in toxic relationships, they will tend to shield that from their colleagues. They would want to form that that presence. They would use the aggression that I do not want people to take me otherwise, because I'm trying to shield that. Number one, I am in a toxic relationship. My partner is physically and verbally and psychologically abusive towards me, and even my ex-partner and the partner before that, and I do not know why. However, when we do a history intake, we find that this person or this girl, she was exposed to abuse at an early age. So often our early life experiences allows us to develop coping mechanisms that determine how we behave under stressful situations. So we will look at the common causes of stress, and some of these causes, depending on their subjective. So for some people, they might be causes, and for some people, they might be triggers. The first trigger or cause might be work-related pressures, that maybe you are working over hours, you're being overworked at work, and as a result, you are finding yourself lacking time to have some quality time to yourself, some me time. A person would then ask, if I am going through so much at home, maybe I am in a toxic relationship, how do I then divide? How do I then control my feelings? How do I then not project what I am going through at home and projecting it to my colleagues? An important mechanism would be to self-reflect. You would ask yourself, why am I triggered when Apelele is telling me that I'm overworking him? As a boss, I should be understanding that, okay, our agreement, Apelele's job description was that he will work from 8 to 4. And if I am giving him workloads that exceed the working hours, I should then be able to understand my role as the employer instead of reacting to what is brought to me on the table. Sometimes for some people, it will be financial concerns that a person would overspend because they lack financial responsibility, or they are unable to control their finances. And for some, as I had explained before, it'll be relationship issues, that when a person is going through the most in their relationship, so when they've just found out, they will bring that energy or those attitudes, or they will project to people whom they redeem as people who are below their level at a workspace. And sometimes you'll find that it is a result of health concerns, because we find that, again, it can be a trigger and it can also be a predisposing factor. You may find that as a result of being in a depressive or stressful state for such a very long time, your body will then react to the stress that your mind is now unable to comprehend. You'll find that some people will even develop illnesses such as hypertension, heart-related illnesses, and diabetic related illnesses as a result of stress. And you'll find that it's an issue of adjustment as a result of major life challenges and social pressures, not only from the external society. You'll find that even from family, you'll have to pay black tax. You'll have to in whatever that you are earning at work, you'll still need to take some of that portion and share it with your family, whether it's your parents, relatives, your children. And it might be environmental factors. You may find that, I'm sure you remember back in 2022, that for those living in KZN, we had an issue of floods where a lot of communities were affected by floods. People lost their homes. And as a result, that brought a great deal of distress to a lot of people and a lack of control. Ukuthi a person would lack the ability to be in charge of their emotions. They would lash out. They'll easily get triggered when a person, maybe they were jokingly saying that, oh, you ugly thing, and that they'll get triggered and that they would use aggression, particularly in a workspace. And sometimes you'll find that uncertainty and unpredictability also becomes a cause for some people, and for some it also a trigger. If you're uncertain about something and you would tend to then predict that if I pass my grade, if you're at school, if I put this amount of pressure in my focus in my studies, I will then pass. And if as a result you end up failing, that would then turn out to create a stressful mindset for you. And past traumas, as I had touched on this before, you'll find that for some people, they were exposed to traumatic incidences when they were children. And for some people, you may find that it may not be trauma that is stemming from childhood, but it may be that it was something that happened, let's say, for an example, the pandemic, COVID-19. It left a lot of people in a deep traumatic state, to such a point that for some people, up until this day, they are still wearing masks, even if they are not showing any flu-related symptoms. But as a result of maybe they lost a loved one to COVID-19, they now have this belief that, what if it happens again? What if it comes back again? Especially during seasons where we're experiencing cold weather conditions and all of that. And then common signs of stress, again, they are subjective. For some people, it may be that they will have an excessive worry or fear, depending on the presenting problem. I'll go back to the example that I used. If you are in an abusive relationship, of which often this is the case, and I remember in one of the president's speech over COVID-19, I think it was during the COVID-19 pandemic or outbreak, where he said, gender-based or intimate partner violence, it's the second pandemic in South Africa, meaning that it affects most of us directly or indirectly. And you may find that as a result that you were exposed to your parents being abusive towards each other. You are now always aloof, agitated, always fearful, especially in your relationship. Whenever your partner starts raising their voice, or whenever your boss at work, they start raising their voice, you get triggered because it might be that that is evoking some emotional pain that is affiliated with being shouted at. And for some people, they may have insomnia-related symptoms where they will have problems sleeping well at night, or sleeping, or even sleeping at all. And they'll sometimes have symptoms where they're always feeling tired. They would want to sleep most of the time, and they would have digestive related problems and headaches, of which many people often, when they are in experiencing distress, they would report having headaches, especially when they're angry or when they're triggered. And some people would have or present with irritability, mood swings, or emotional reactivity. And some would present with difficulty concentrating or making decisions, meaning that because they are fixated, as I had explained before, that if you experienced a trauma, and a trauma, it is a foundation of stress. So if you have unhealed trauma, your mind will be fixated on that trauma, meaning that within that area, your mind will not be able to move away from it. You'll find yourself not being able to grasp information that is conveyed to you by your boss, by your colleagues, or by your significant other, because your mind is not in the present moment. And often I use depression because stress, if it's left untreated for so long, a person would experience depressive symptoms. And when I say depressive symptoms, there's a process, an interlink between depression and anxiety. So I want to trace the issue of difficulty concentrating and the first point that I made over there, which traces back to anxiety. So I'll make an example of a traumatic incident. Let's say, for an example, you were driving alone at night and it was raining, and you somehow get involved in a car accident. Time passes by, then you start having these flashbacks. These flashbacks are an indication that your mind is still fixated on the incident. And then as a result of that fixation, you will then develop this fear or this anxiety to then drive again or be in a car as a result of what happened in the past. And as a result, you will not be able to be in the present because your mind is stuck in the past and it is fearing going to the future. So imagine having that mindset in a workspace. You will make a lot of mistakes because no proper interventions were given to you or were provided after you were involved in that traumatic incident. Another person would have physical tension as a result of the stress, such as muscle pain or tremors. So now we'll move on to resilience. Resilience, it is the ability to withstand, recover, and adapt in the face of adversity, trauma, or significant stress. It involves the ability to absorb and manage difficult experiences and to emerge from them with a sense of growth, learning, and increased strength. Oh, I made a typo there. Sorry, I'll fix it. I meant strength. I wanted to highlight that resilience and stress are interlinked, meaning stress is a response to adversity, while resilience is the capacity to cope with and overcome adversity. I'll repeat that. Stress is an emotional response to adversity, whereas resilience, it is the capacity to cope with and overcome adversity. However, resilience is not hardiness, meaning a person's ability to resist stress and adversity. It's not you resisting or being titanium towards stressful conditions. It is not coping. It is not the ability to manage and deal with stress and adversity, but the capacity to manage and deal with stress. I hope I'm clear on that point. And it is not post-traumatic growth, meaning it is not the positive changes that occur after experiencing trauma. So the key component of resilience, the first one, it is regulation, which is the ability to manage and regulate emotions. So when you get triggered, just like in the example that I used before, that if Apelele comes to Sandile and says, "Oh, Sandile, you ugly little thing," Sandile, in order to be resilient or to show resilience, the key component is for him to be able to regulate his emotions, meaning he will need to have a reflective stance as to why is he getting triggered by what Apelele is saying to him. And the second one is self-awareness, which is the ability to understand one's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Because you'll find some people are reactive towards circumstances, but then they do not really understand why, which is why I always encourage people to go for therapy, because the whole goal and point of therapy is to help a person to have insight towards their presenting problem. Just like in the example that I made before, that in many series that you guys might have been exposed to, you will find a psychologist asking a person, would he tell me about your childhood? That is the person, that is the psychologist trying or assisting the person to be more self-aware. You will not be able to be self-aware if you do not know the history of yourself. And often people tend to forget things that were stressful towards them, especially if they were kids, because they think that I've just forgotten about it. However, it gets stored in your unconscious mind. And I want to highlight that point, that whatever traumatic incident that happens, just because you're not aware of it or you're not aware that it happened, it doesn't mean that your mind hasn't stored it. Each and everything, I'll make an example with, for those that have gotten their driver's license, you'll remember, Oguchi, the driving instructor, he would be mean sometimes. You will even have this anxiety to even go into a driving school because you know they will shout at you, and often they'll make you feel as if you're slow or dumb. And that alone is an example of a traumatic incident. Now, look at the beauty of that traumatic incident, that now you are able to change gears without actually having to think about pressing or pressing on the clutch and putting gear number one or number two. You just do it automatically, which is proof that just because something you're not remembering of it always, or you're not, it's not in your conscious mind, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It becomes part of your behavior. And then another component, it is the positive relationships. If you have positive relationships or with your family or friends, social support, it makes you more resilient. It makes you more able to cope or more able to deal with stressful situations better than a person who faces life's hindrances all by themselves. And the coping skills or coping mechanisms, which are the ability to manage and deal with stress and adversity. I want to highlight, Uguti, sometimes we have positive coping mechanisms or coping skills and negative coping skills, but then they all fall under coping mechanisms. You'll find that some people will use alcohol as a coping skill, and some will use cigarettes. And often, which is something that I've noticed from some of my clients, if we're going to talk about something that triggers them or puts them in stressful condition, they will then ask for a break to just go outside and have a smoke. And then they'll come back and report that they're feeling much calmer. So to them, cigarettes serve as a coping mechanism, where others would use a alcohol. And meaning making, which is the ability to find meaning and purpose in life. You'll find that for most people who find themselves fixated in a stressful condition, they feel that they are worthless. They feel that they have no purpose. They have no meaning of as to why they're living. Usually, you'll find that often people who are experiencing depression or are in a depressive state, they would feel like this most of the time. And often you'll find that whenever they're feeling like this, it is probably when they are in their final stage of depression, of where they are having suicidal thoughts and or are willing or have attempted to commit suicide as a result of being in a stressful mindset for quite a very long time. So now we're going to look at factors that promote resilience. Some of these factors may also align with the ones that I've just mentioned before, which are the key components. For some people, they're genetically predisposed to be much more resilient than others. For an example, if there is a history of mental illness in your family, you may find that you are most likely to develop a mental health related concern or a mental health disorder if there is a history of mental illness in your family when compared to someone who does not have a history or known history of mental illness. And I will want to highlight the reason why I use the term mental illness. It's because usually people who suffer from mental illness, they're much more likely to experience stressful conditions when compared to people without or people who do not live with a mental health related illness or disorder. And early life experiences, just like I had explained before, that if a person had negative life experiences, they are most probably likely to especially if they were raised by parents who were let's say, for an example, they were emotionally unavailable. As a result, they would look for emotionally unavailable partners. And if a person had positive early life experiences, such as positive family environments, that can promote resilience. If they had present parents and they formed secure attachments with their parents, they're most likely to be more resilient. And social support, as I had explained before, the presence of supportive relationships can promote resilience, because it means in whatever it is that you're going through, you have people by your side who are going or assisting you and cheering you and giving you hope that whatever it is that is stressing you will pass. And then coping skills, which are the ability to manage and deal with stress and adversity, can promote resilience. I even made an example of a person who smokes. Obviously, as much as health-wise, it is not ideal to advise a person to smoke, but then if a person, and often I use the example of people who smoke wonga. Everyone knows how dangerous the drug is, but as a result of the person's or the people's inability to cope with whatever it is that they are facing with, they would tend to resort to using drugs. The same thing applies to people who smoke, as much as a lot of them will oppose this, but it is even written on the box of cigarettes that it is cancerous. Knowing very well that it's cancerous, the person who smokes doesn't really care, because they just want to alleviate whatever stressful situation that they're facing. The same thing applies to people who smoke wonga. And for some people, they would use positive coping mechanisms, such as exercising, having a healthy diet that also promotes resilience, and also self-care, taking care of yourself, engaging in self-care activities such as exercise, as I had explained, mindfulness, and that can promote resilience. And at the end of our presentation, we will engage in a mindfulness activity, just to give you a feel how it is like to be mindful, because I know it is often spoken about. I would say a person would need to be mindful doing my breathing exercises, but then a lot of the time it is said in passing. People are not actually given an opportunity to practice mindfulness in those platforms. So I will try and accommodate that on this one. So, cannot see now. Okay, developing and strengthening resilience. Strengthening and developing resilience can involve being emotionally aware, which is something I've also mentioned before, that it is very much important to be aware of your emotions and understanding where do they come from, understanding your triggers and why you get triggered, which traces back to the point, which is the most fundamental one, that it is mostly important it is mostly important to reflect on your emotions and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? And being able to be emotionally aware allows you to even heal better if you haven't enrolled already in therapy. And social support, as I had explained before, social support encourages one to be more resilient when it comes to life's hindrances, and to actually develop and also strengthen resilience. If you were dependent on someone, because we might say that we have people that are social supporters, and you may find that those people are actually the reasons why we're actually experiencing distress. Oh God, sorry. I don't know what happened here. So as I was saying, you may find that some people would regard themselves getting emotionally supported by their families, whereas their families are the reasons why they're feeling distressed. That would mean, in order for them to sharpen or strengthen their resilience, they would need to form new relationships. Not to say they will need to leave their families, but to form kinship ties with other people, form bonds with people that make you feel good about yourself, rather than seeking approval or seeking validation from people who actually put you in a depressive state. And self-help strategies, again, engaging in mindfulness, exercise, and also taking care of your diet. Also, self-compassion. Be compassionate about yourself, and treat yourself with kindness and understanding, just as you would to a close friend. So in other words, be kind to yourself. If you see that maybe work pressures are high, do not set yourself unrealistic goals. If you've been given an assignment at work or at school or wherever the case may be, set yourself realistic set yourself a realistic timeline and boundaries, which is the most fundamental component of developing resilience, is to also have boundaries. Just like you would respect your friends' boundaries, also have your boundaries in place, which is part of a self-compassion. You'll find that some people overplay their roles in whatever relations they have with other people. Even at work, they will constantly do favors for their colleagues. They will constantly do favors for their friends. And that alone is telling you that, okay, you are seeking, unconsciously, you're seeking validation. Where is that coming from? Lay yourself boundaries while you're still investigating where that is stemming from, because often people who do not have boundaries are people who often felt abandoned or who felt alone when they were kids or while they were growing up. So as a result, they learned that in order for me to sustain relationships with people, I need to give myself to people. So you need to build boundaries in order to maintain that sense of self-compassion. Refrain from negative thoughts. Speak positive about yourself. Even if you see that, okay, right now, as much as life is throwing lemons at me, tell yourself that I'll make it out alive even. I'll pass through this just like I've done so in many, many events before. Because having a negative mindset about yourself always puts you lower in terms of performance, whether it's school-related performance or work performance, because already you have regarded yourself as a failure, and we are a product of our thoughts. Establish a routine, meaning have a sense of, have a time frame, have not really a time frame, but have some form of structure with regards to your life. Know that at around this time, I'm spending time with my family. Around this time, I'm at work, and after work, I'm going to the gym, which forms part of you taking care of yourself, which is the most fundamental time or aspect of your life that is important when trying to build or develop resilience. Develop healthy boundaries. When I say healthy boundaries, I mean learn to say no and set realistic boundaries with others. And this traces back to what I had been explaining under self-compassion, the importance of setting boundaries and saying no, but not in a rude way. Explain if you will not be able to assist a colleague should they ask a favor from you. Explain why it is that you ought to do your work first before you may engage in assisting them with theirs. In doing so, you're setting or you're reinforcing boundaries, not in a bad way, but in a most polite and cordial manner. And then practice assertive communication. Express your needs and feelings clearly and respectfully. So be assertive, but not rude. Have a way of talking to your colleagues, even your partner and families, in a way that conveys a message without actually being rude. In that way, in whatever way or manner they respond towards you, it will not have you getting triggered because you have conveyed a message without affiliating any emotion to it. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. But before I get into a Q&A, I want us to engage in an activity which is a mindfulness activity. And I will explain why after we have all engaged. And I am assuming that everyone will participate 100%. So I want everyone to pay close attention to my voice. And I want each and every one of you to close your eyes. And I want you to breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Continue breathing using that pace with your eyes shut. And I want you to go back psychologically to your earliest childhood memory where you were the most happiest while you're breathing in and out. You're breathing in and out. Maybe on that memory that is coming to mind right now, you were with people, you were with family. I want you to remember the conversation that was taking place, the people that were there, the atmosphere, the sounds, the weather, while you're breathing in and out. Maybe some of those people have demised. They're no longer alive, but I want you to breathe in and out. Now, I want you to imagine the older version of yourself, which is the current version, walking into that room. It might be a room, it might be outside, depending on your memory while you're breathing in and out. Now, I want you to imagine yourself taking that little version of you, that 4-year-old you, that 5-year-old you, that 6-year-old you, picking them up and then hugging them while you're breathing in and out, while you're breathing in and out. And probably the younger version of you might be confused and would say, who is this? And now imagine yourself walking with them and leaving the premises, leaving the house, leaving the area, depending on your memory, while you're breathing in and out. Maybe the younger version of yourself might feel agitated. Maybe they might want to go back because they're not familiar with who you are. But assure them that where you're taking them to a place of safety and love while you're breathing in and out. Now imagine yourself walking, carrying that little version of yourself and hugging yourself, that younger version of yourself, and walking up until the area where you got the younger version of yourself actually disappears while you're breathing in and out. While you're still walking, now imagine yourself hugging that younger version of yourself again and keeping in mind all the things that they are about to encounter in life because you've seen it all. It might be abuse from an intimate partner. It might be bullying from school. It might be bullying from work. Just hug them. And by you hugging them, imagine healing all of those early experiences and the experiences that may follow after. Now imagine walking into the room where you are right now and merging and becoming one with the younger version of yourself. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes and yeah, we're done. So assuming that everyone engaged in the activity, the whole point and purpose, I wanted everyone to have a feel, just a brief feel of how it is like to be in therapy. That is the whole goal of therapy in a few minutes. But in therapy, I do not really do that activity with my clients or patients. The reason why I wanted to engage with you guys in this activity is for you guys to actually start the healing process. Because for some of you, it might happen that you even had flashbacks of memories that you were not even aware you actually had. And for some of you, it might happen that when you were hugging the younger version, it might have brought some emotional distress, which means the healing process has begun. So thank you so much. We may have the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Sandy, for the presentation. So colleagues, you can just raise your hand and we will unmute you. While we are still waiting for the colleagues to raise their hands and have questions. When you were mentioning, when you were talking about refraining from negative thoughts, I immediately thought of this TikTok trend where you ask children to finish a phrase. So this young girl was asked, and she answered so unbothered. Her mother was like, when life gives you lemon, she just said you eat them. And then she was asked, don't cry over. She just said stupid things. I laughed so hard.
Mm.
You've highlighted several common stress triggers, such as financial concerns and social pressure. Is there a way for individuals to temporarily set aside these stresses while going at work in order to prevent them from affecting their job performances? So that is my question to you, Mr. Sandy. I will also read from the comments from the chat box if we have other questions.
Mm. All right, Sapelele. I would often suggest that, especially if it's financial related stress or stress due to financial constraints, I would often recommend that a person sets a monthly budget for themselves and do not overspend more than, don't spend more than you earn, you know, and because I understand that each and everything evolves around money. So you can imagine from traveling from home to work, having to have lunch, everything has to involve money. So imagine having financial constraints or emotionally stressed as a result of financial constraints. It may leave you agitated and easily triggered because you're always aloof. You're always thinking about where are you going to get the money, and often people will end up going to loan sharks, which further exacerbates the stress even more. So even if you see that you are in desperate need of something, because what I've noticed is that people tend to conform a lot. Just because you saw your colleague having an iPhone 16, then you assume that, oh, okay, I also need an iPhone 16 so that I can be up to that standard. Know your limits, know your standards, and basically stay in your lane and remind yourself that you're not in competition with anyone. But for those that are already financially constrained, I would recommend that they go for debt counseling, because usually when people are experiencing stress as a result of finances, usually they are in debt. So I would recommend that.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. I'll just check on the webinar chat. Louisa is saying, thank you, Sandy, for this wonderful and insightful presentation. Let me see if we have a question. Cyril say, I really enjoyed this webinar, thank you. And it seems like people are grateful and are thanking our presenter for today's presentation. I'll take that as we do not have any question. Maybe if someone has something, they can just raise their hand, or if they would like to speak. Hi, everyone. I am Olga Jansen. I just like to know, can you deal with triggers in workplace? I just like to know, can you deal with triggers in workplace? I'm not sure if you understand
Yeah.
that question, Mrs. Sandile. Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, I believe the first step to actually, as I had explained before, is to reflect on yourself. Ask yourself, why am I getting triggered by this? Because usually when people get triggered, they do not actually have insight uh, that they're actually getting triggered, not as a result of what is happening in the workplace, but because there are certain unhealed wounds, psychological wounds that are getting evoked by a particular person's actions. So let's say, for an example, you're seeing that, just like you've just said here, Olga, I think you said it's your supervisor. If your supervisor is triggering you and you're seeing that you have tried all means to address it, I would recommend that you enroll yourself for therapy. If you have taken you've taken the matter to the supervisor and maybe they are making funny comments about maybe your appearance, uh, personal related things that are not related to work, and you're seeing that it is not conducive, it's not helping in any way, I would then suggest and recommend that you work on yourself so that you can find better coping mechanisms through therapy.
Thank you, Sandile. I think we can just wrap up with this presentation. Colleagues, please note that the recording will be available as soon as we finish, as soon as the day end. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm still breathing and going back to my childhood. So you'll excuse me. Yeah. So this webinar will be available. We will send recording to everyone that registered for this event. Before we wrap up, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to you, Sandile, for insightful presentation on today's webinar. This session was truly well attended. Thank you, colleagues. And I'm sure each of us have walked away with a valuable home take points to apply in their daily work. And again, a big thank you to everyone for who participated and contributed to the success of this event. We appreciate your time and engagement, and we hope to see you at the future LIASA online events. Have a wonderful day and take care. Thank you, colleagues.